Welcome to Nature Revisited, a podcast that explores our relationship with the natural world. It consists of interviews, stories, and discussions that highlight the notion that nature is not a place one goes to, but rather a place one is already a part of, that we are nature. For those of you new to the podcast, my name is Stefan Van Norden, and thank you, everyone, for joining me for this episode, Patrick Dougherty, Stickworks. While scrolling on my phone recently, I came across a photograph of an amazing wooden structure made of sticks. It was a beautiful castle-like structure that had children playing in and around it. It was like nothing I had seen before. So after learning who had designed and built this enchanting structure, I visited Patrick Dougherty's website, Stickworks, to see the full collection of the incredible work that Patrick calls sapling sculptures. Though Patrick's work really needs to be seen, and better yet, experienced in person, I invited Patrick to join me on Nature Revisited to talk about his whimsical sculptures and the importance of his work. So Patrick joins me from his home in North Carolina. So Patrick, thank you for joining me on Nature Revisited. It's a pleasure to have you on the podcast. Seeing how my listeners can't see any photos of the amazing sapling structures that you have created, and since they are the focus of this interview, can you describe what your creations look like, their size, and the material they are made of?
I have a great website. It's stickwork.net, and people can look up and see the photographs of the previous work. So it will become more obvious in a way of what I do. But just to say that initially I had to figure out what birds and beavers and other natural shelter builders already knew about sticks, and that is that they have an inherent method of joining. If you drag a stick through the woods, you see what I mean. It entangles and everything. That infuriating tendency to tangle that I use to hook these things together. I would describe that I do really large work that's reflective of the surroundings, work that responds to the public in that particular spot. I have a method, or I have a way of building things. One thing that I do initially is I'll make a site visit, and then I come up with an idea, and then we'll play that idea out. But no matter what I do, I start with a structural base, and those are usually little trees that are about 2 inches around and as long as I possibly can get them. And somehow I stabilize those, whether it's jamming them down in a crack in the building or putting them in a railing or hooking them into the limbs of a tree or digging holes. That's my beginnings. And then I usually set a scaffolding around the footprint, and I'll start flexing the shape that I want, and then I'll pull to the scaffolding, and I'll tie the piece in kind of the shape that I want. It doesn't have to be specific. In a way, it's like making a canvas and then drawing on it. So once I get my stable base, my structural elements, once I lock that form up, it's really good to go. The second phase is kind of the aesthetic phase, and that is that what I really do is layer. I have that first layer, my structural layer, and then I'm going to layer another group of sticks on that to give a kind of sense of the aesthetic. I want a kind of a drawn surface, one that's luxurious, one that seems to be moving in a certain direction. And then finally, I go back and I do the cosmetic work. Really, in drawing terms, that means erasing. If there are areas of the work that I don't think that quite match up to what I want, I'll erase them by putting little smaller sticks on them. So really, I have kind of a three-phase way of building. The material that I use comes from the woods nearby where I'm working. And it might be along roadways, it might be under power lines, around lakes, rivers, behind the stadium. It's just that I'm looking for a place where saplings have come up. Oftentimes, I'll be looking for materials in a city. I'll be driving around the outer belt line where there's the most development is going on. May have to stop and wave somebody down and say, don't cut those. Could we come back and cut them next week? I use maples, which I love up and down the East Coast. I use sweet gum in the South. There's a lot of things that I can use that I don't know about until I get to the site. Out in California, I might use willow. In the Midwest, I might use roughleaf dogwood. In Hawaii, I might use strawberry guava. So that's my material. That's how I do it. I've always liked the fact that I've tried to get material near the site, close to the site, where that's part of the whole deal.
When did you first start making wooden sculptures, and how did that evolve?
I always think that things that go on in your childhood adds to some kinds of later reverberation. And for me, when we were little, we played in a dogwood grove and made lots of forts. So when I went back to school and tried to become a sculptor, I think I remembered that pleasure of working in the wood and thought, well, maybe that would be a material that I possibly could use. And one way I think that that's contributed to the interest in my work, because everyone has had that common experience in childhood of using the utility of sticks that you might pick up on the ground or find in the woods. I think that was some of my beginnings. At some point, I just felt like I was a maker. I needed to go back to school and learn something about the art world and sculpture. I went back to the University of North Carolina. The first day I went into the art lab was the best day of my life and really inspired me to try to understand sculpture in general and find a material like I have the saplings.
So what inspires you? A lot of the sculptures look very otherworldly or have an indigenous influence.
Well, one thing I try to do is to work to make the pieces look natural and not man-made. Part of that is just a drawing style. In other words, if you hit a piece of paper with a pencil, you usually strike it with one weight and finish off with another weight line. You make tapered lines. And since sticks are tapered, if you organize those tapers correctly or in one direction, it tends to imply motion. And you think, oh, that thing has a sense of movement. That means that the sculptures remind people a bit about the forces in the natural world and make them look less man-made. In terms of finding inspiration, of course there is, when you take a stick out of the woods, you have the overtones of wilderness and forest and so forth. In terms of finding what you're going to make, I have a process of making a site visit and I try to work out all of the basics of what's going to happen during the construction. But then there's the idea of site. Well, where is that thing going to be? Is it going to be in front of the library? Is it going to be out on the verge? Also, there's practicalities of the site. Maybe there's a great tree that you might see. And so you come up with the site, and then you start thinking a little bit reflectively about what are some of the shapes that are in the surrounding area, because you want this piece to be bedded and look like it belongs there. And so by reflecting some of what is going on, there's a way that helps bed the piece into the community. I don't know, just jumps out of the side of my head. I'll just think, this is a museum and it doesn't have any bushes in front of it. Maybe I'll construct a series of shrubbery that go with this building. And that shrubbery can be entered and walked through. And so you'll say what it would be like to stand inside your bushes. You'll make doors and windows so that the public can walk up to the museum and walk through the shrubbery and enjoy the views. A lot of my imagery has been about architecture from the past, something that's fashioned after Permonte's Tepietto in Rome and placed in a big garden. Generally, what I try to do is to get a theme firm enough that I have some parameters for the work, but vague enough that I can ad-lib within. You have to allow enough latitude that you can search out what you really mean. In other words, there's a lot of inspiration in it, as though you were a painter and you put some paint down and then you look into that situation and you think, how could I improve the look of what I'm making? I'm often looking at line configurations and saying, this could be a lot more interesting if I use lines in this way and this way and this way. And even though it's a very abstract way that I'm thinking, the viewer doesn't see it that way. They see it in total. They walk up to it. They feel like they can go in it. It can be very, very exciting and very exploratory. One of the things that I've always been dedicated to is allowing people to talk to me during the time that I'm making something. I feel like making things has the potential of the drama of the build. I often believe that the viewers are more interested in how something is going to be constructed than they are the final product. We don't put big fences up around, people walk up all day long and say, what are you doing? What is this? What are you trying to do? Over a period of time, the person that may be calling the police on you the first day because you're dumping limbs, that person may be inviting you to dinner the last day, so there's my interest in how the drama of building changes people's attitude as something comes to fruition and looks less like sticks and more like some evocative situation that causes people to come running when they see it.
So do most of your sculptures, do they have public access? And is that intentional?
I'm really dedicated to accessibility, and I believe that this interplay that I have between the doer and the viewer has been absolutely critical to being able to make great sculptures. That not only do I like to talk to people, but I like to have the work on display in places that people really can see them and use them and interact with them, because I feel that that's a crucial part of this work. It's not every artist's work, but it's a crucial part of my work. I really think that as I've seen the work develop over the years, that it does capture people's imagination. It does cause lots of personal associations for these viewers. They do think about childhood. They do think about animal life. They do think about a walk in the woods. And one of my favorite situations that seem to occur again and again is that a couple will walk up as the man repetitiously tries to push the sculpture over his shoulder. The wife will say, well, honey, we could live here. That's come to mean to me is that without your worldly possessions, a lot of people would like to cross the forest curtain and just have a moment with the other animals. There's a part of our minds or our imaginations that lays back there and lays with the natural world. And my sculptures are a bit promotive and reminding people about the value of the natural world, but also create fantasies about what happens out there. The need to build shelter, other animals building shelter, your first kiss under a lilac bush. So many associations you have with the material itself. I always hope that I can call into some of that fantasy so that you go a little bit further, that it touches something of the human condition. Oftentimes people will say to me, well, I don't like sculpture, but I like this. And somehow I feel like a sculpture has wormed its way into someone's mind through the natural world.
When you look at your photos on your website, there are people and children playing on and around them. How important is that to you?
Well, this is a practical matter, but if you want people to look at things, if you see other people there, you're more willing to go over. Oftentimes, if children start playing on something, adults will follow. That there is a diffidence when you see a sculpture out somewhere about walking up to it and exploring it. Kids can play a vital role in getting a lot of people to come and look, and their parents bring them over there, and then everybody gets to enjoy the sculpture. What happens to me is no matter where I go to work, somebody pulls out an iPhone and shows me, we've seen 3 of your pieces. I want people to come over, want them to interact with it, enjoy it, and further it. You see people flitting around inside of a work. If you have plenty of windows and doors, it's very encouraging, and other people will come over and look at it. My strategy for getting people to look at things is to put it right off the walkway so that maybe they can step into it immediately after they've walked around and looked at it. They didn't realize that they had veered off of life's course and accepted this illusion for a minute and had a great time.
So, do you have help making them? And how long does it usually take on average to finish one?
I've been working for 40 years and I've made 335 big pieces. I would say always the work is completed in 3 weeks. That allows you to make plans for working on other sculptures. So I do 10 sculptures a year. 3 weeks out of every month, I'm traveling somewhere. Plus, I have to make site visits for the next year. So everything is choreographed fairly tightly. I have an assistant. For the past 7 years, my son Sam has been my assistant. Before that, I had other series of assistants taking one person with me to do the sculptures and just arriving with a couple pairs of clippers. Generally, the day is 8 hours a day for 3 weeks, taking 1 weekend off. And that allows enough time to build a really big, great sculpture. The work is fast. It proceeds fast. Takes about 3 days of that 3 weeks to gather the material.
So again, how many have you made and where are they located?
I've been really lucky. I've had a lot of opportunity. I've worked all over the United States, and currently I might have 25 pieces up at any one time. The work is slated to last about 2 years. Sometimes in the drier climates it lasts more, but I've only done temporary work. It kind of reflects the life cycle of this material itself. I always say that a good flower bed has its day. There's a refreshing aspect of moving along. For me, that's been making new sculptures. And we don't claim that these sculptures will last forever, that they have a life cycle. Generally, they stay in good condition for 2 years, and then they're usually taken down by the sponsors. Sometimes they say 7 years. If it's out in Montana or Wyoming, where it's either cold or dry, these pieces tend to last forever. You can look at sticks that are just laying on the ground there. I bet some of them are 30 years old. I do have a few works that are inside, one at the Gibbs Museum in Charleston, South Carolina, and the other in North Carolina Museum in Raleigh. And those have been in place inside for a fairly long time. But generally, they're outside, have a lot of wear and tear. Like you saw the children play. We try to put them in places that have a little sanctity about the area, and so people are not as prone to tear them down. But we have currently one in the park in Detroit, and the people have loved that thing. And even though it's kind of outbound, that thing is in perfect condition. And a lot of times we'll have volunteers come back and look at the piece and kind of work on it a little bit to keep it safe.
What have been some of the rewards for you from making these wonderful sculptures?
You asked me another question, and this dovetails into that, and that is who helps me make these pieces. We've had a lot of great volunteers and really a lot of fun having them on site. It also endears the piece to the public as well, because if you see your neighbors working on something, it takes a bit of the bite out of thinking about what should be legitimate imagery for your community. If your neighbors are out there, it's much more palatable. One of the pleasures that I have had in building these sculptures is the interaction I've had with my sponsors, with communities that those folks are in, and also with the volunteers, which sometimes equal 75 over the 3-week period. You hear a little bit about their life. It's just great. Not only do we have that going on, but we have the public walking up. Generally, the work is completed in public and there are no studio doors to close and no place to hide. You're just right out there on the sidewalk. So there's a lot of interaction with the public take place too. And that's sometimes pretty rollicking. People might say, well, I don't like this. Why are you doing this? And over a period of time, you might have the same users walk by every morning and they'll see an improvement. And by the time you're finished, they're saying, don't do anything else. You'll ruin it. All of that has high interest. For me, sculpture is not a lonely process where you're out there, man against the world, beating your head against the wall, hoping people will like it. It's a more hands-on situation where you're thoroughly embroiled in the community, in the lives of the volunteers, and also the public that just simply walks up and is assessing what you're doing without any prejudice. Your sponsor may tell you it's good, whether it's not, but the public doesn't lie. They're a hard sell. So they like it and they hasten over to see you and talk to you about it and walk through it. Then you've been a very successful sculptor.
So you mentioned that your son has been helping you with making these structures. Will he be continuing the work?
He's a potter by trade. Currently, we are working together. Lately, I've decided that I'll temporarily and maybe permanently stop making these huge pieces. It's a complicated situation to take on the building of large sculptures away from home, because you have to be reassuring to your sponsor. They got to believe that you can do it, and sticks are a hard sell. You're going to do what? You want us to go out to a river and gather a bunch of things, and then you're going to come over, the mayor or the senator is going to come down here and dedicate this thing, and it's going to be good? Are you sure? You're worried about the public's belief that you can do something. Reaching out to your sponsor, reaching out to the public, that's key in whether you continue to make these big public works. They have to come up with the funding for it, and so you have to be convincing that this could really work out. So I'm not sure that he will, in fact, continue this big public work. He probably will be working on more smaller works like we're doing in a studio and focusing on his pottery work. We've just completed a huge walk-in wood kiln at his studio, and so he might be pulled off course.
What do you hope people will take away with them after visiting one of your sculptures?
I hope that the sculpture, as people enjoy it, that they're reminded of a bit of the natural world, the forest, the bushes, the brush, the birds, that they flash on some of the deeper feelings that we have in our subconscious about our deep history on the earth, hoping that it reawakes a little bit of the indigenous work that your ancestors did. Also kind of conveying that through beauty, through the intensity of sculpture and using sticks. That's the how you do it. The way that something sits at sight so that it seems to have a rightness of being there also enhances the feelings that you have and gets your imagination flowing. I hope I've done my work. The great thing about being out there has been that the public has told me about what makes them feel this way. So I've been able to hone the imagery and develop my sculptures along the lines of the fantasies and appreciations that people do have.
I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Patrick Dougherty, and that you take the time to visit his website, stickwork.net, to see the incredible work that Patrick has been doing over the course of his career. And that maybe you have the opportunity of seeing one of these incredible sculptures in person. If you enjoyed this episode, please share with friends, family, and colleagues. You can follow Nature Revisited on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, or our website, nordenproductions.com. I would also like to invite you to share your comments and ideas, and even suggestions for future guests for Nature Revisited on the comment section of this episode on our website. The music for Nature Revisited is Tim Buckley, buzz and fly. Nature Revisited is produced by Stefan Van Norden and Charles Gagan, and I hope you will join me for the next edition of Nature Revisited. And in the meantime, do remember, we are nature.